Holy Saturday, which some also refer to as Silent Saturday, is a liminal space of unknown and waiting. It's a space of in-between. Jesus is dead. His followers are devastated because they've lost the one they had hoped would be the promised one, the one they had long awaited to deliver them from the Roman oppression and back into liberation. They were waiting to be the triumphant ones again, like the stories they had heard passed down from generation to generation from the time of King David and King Solomon. Jesus, their leader, the promised one, the one who had healed the sick and who had cast out evil spirits and who had even raised the dead, was now himself dead. And what's more is that he was put to death by the state in a manner that only the worst of criminals faced. He was beaten to within inches of his life and then murdered on a Roman tool of torture. No one expected this. After the hundreds of years of waiting and silence, they found themselves waiting again, this time with brutally fresh disappointment and deep grief. This is Holy Saturday, Silent Saturday, and it's excruciatingly difficult. Our passage for this homily is Mark 15, 42 through 47. It reads, "It was preparation day, that is the day before the Sabbath. So as evening approached, Joseph of Arimathea, a prominent member of the council, who was himself waiting for the kingdom of God, went boldly to Pilate to ask for Jesus' body. Pilate was surprised to hear that he was already dead. Summoning the centurion, he asked him if Jesus had already died. When he learned from the centurion that it was so, he gave the body to Joseph. So Joseph bought some linen cloth, took down the body, wrapped it in the linen, and placed it in a tomb cut out of rock. Then he rolled a stone against the entrance of the tomb. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joseph, saw where he was laid." Joseph of Arimathea was a religious leader. The passage names him as one who was waiting for the kingdom of God. I think that's what Holy Saturday is about, waiting for the kingdom of God. It's about living in the in-between of death and resurrection. Joseph embodies faithful waiting for the kingdom in a way that serves as an example for us who wait in the space between life and life. First, the passage says that Joseph went boldly to Pilate to ask him for Jesus' dead body. There's something about waiting that requires true boldness. In waiting, it's good for us to continue to hold out hope. It's bold to hope in the midst of not knowing. It's bold to ask for things when everything we had thought was going to be true is disrupted and our expectations are completely let down. Joseph of Arimathea, who was waiting for the kingdom, asked boldly despite his own disappointment with Jesus' death, despite the social pressure he would have certainly felt from the rest of the council members, despite all the costs. He asked boldly. I wonder what it looks like for you to ask boldly in this season of your life. What are you waiting for? Has God been silent? Have you experienced unimaginable disappointment? Holy Saturday gives us permission to, and even beckons us to ask again for the thing or things that we have long been waiting for. Maybe you can't ask boldly. Maybe all you can do is ask. That's your step of boldness. So what are you asking for boldly? What are we asking for boldly? These questions are Holy Saturday, Silent Saturday questions as we live in the in-between. There is boldness in waiting for the kingdom. The other thing I notice about Joseph that's instructive for us is that he takes the promised one of God and buries him gently. The passage reads, "When he learned from the centurion that it was so, he gave the body to Joseph. So Joseph bought some linen cloth, took down the body, wrapped it in linen, and placed it in a tomb cut out of rock." How must Joseph have felt holding Jesus' lifeless body in his hands? How far did he have to walk to buy the linen cloth? And what was on his mind as he walked and bargained in the market for a burial cloth? When he wrapped Jesus' body in the linen, how tenderly can you imagine him handling Jesus? Did he talk to him even though he was gone, expressing his grief and his sorrow? Did he weep over the body as he wrapped him up? We don't know. But from the description, we know that Joseph buried Jesus, and I imagine he buried him very gently. You see, waiting for the kingdom isn't only about asking boldly. Sometimes it's also about burying gently. It's just so hard in this life to let go of things that are finished, that have run their course. We want to cling to things that we had hoped would bring life and meaning and purpose. We want to cling to things that had felt like a promise. Still, sometimes faithful kingdom living can mean laying to rest ambitions and relationships, career goals and dreams, or hopes that we had had for our kids, or maybe even our parents. Things that were really good, or were going to be really good, that had so much promise, sometimes have to be buried, painful as it is. There is honor in burying things gently. The process ascribes value to what is being laid to rest, and it brings closure that gives us a chance to move forward. What are you burying gently? There is an invitation that Holy Saturday offers us, that Joseph of Arimathea demonstrates for us, that precious, beautiful things can be tenderly laid to rest, even as we wait for the kingdom of God. It can be difficult to know when to be bold and when to bury things gently in our lives. And there's not a formula that answers that question for us. Joseph's story, while helpful in being an example of waiting for the kingdom, doesn't offer 3 easy steps for knowing which action to take. Sometimes the only way to know how to best move ahead is to sit with Jesus in our silence and in our unknowing. Being with Jesus in the midst of your disappointment and your frustration. Maybe it's letting Jesus be with you. Maybe you're angry or apathetic toward faith because you've asked boldly more times than you can count, and you're still left with no answers and no change. You'd just as soon keep Jesus at arm's length than invite him in again and be disappointed. Silence and liminality can bring us to the edges of ourselves. Burying important things and people can make us raw beyond our wildest imaginations. But all is not lost in these difficult circumstances. Because even while we wait for the kingdom of God, we know that resurrection has happened. And we know with that comes renewal and life and liberation. I encourage you today to wait for the kingdom and to invite Jesus into the liminal and silent spaces of your life. And in doing so, my hope for you is that you would find hope and peace and renewal in those places with him.